feel like culturally we're splitting into two factions, people who do and people who watch other people do. You have to
Interesting.
decide which one you're going to be.
Jill is the founder and owner of Nuit Astrology. She is a mama, a mystic, and astrologer who loves yoga, cooking, eating, traveling, and gardening. She found her way through the temple of Kriya Yoga and the teachings of Goswami Kriyananda. Her Uranus return was in her early 40s, which inspired her to open a yoga studio in Southwestern Virginia in 2008. After the pandemic, she did a major pivot, sold the yoga studio, and became a full time astrology and tarot reader. We're going to hear all about that today. She reinvented herself over and over in this life and doing it again as she just currently relocated to Portugal. She offers astrology and tarot readings, online courses, as well as offering astrology tarot monthly membership program and a new mentorship, right? In mentoring individuals who are seeking wisdom and accountability on their personal spiritual journey. Jill is also very excited to begin offering retreats again, coming up in Portugal, Italy, and India. We have to come to one of those, Jill. Hailey and I will meet at one of your retreats. Her goal with astrology, tarot, and esoteric wisdom is to empower others with a deep knowledge of themselves and why they are here. Jill is a Taurus sun, Aries moon, Libra rising, and love is her superpower. So we are in good company. Thank you so much, Jill. As a little bit of a backstory, I met Jill through an Ayurveda teacher, actually through Katie Silcox, and I fell in love with you immediately. Absolutely mesmerized by your teachings and how you share the beautiful astrology in such an accessible way. So I immediately booked a session with you, and then immediately had Hailey book a session with you. And I just recently had a good friend asking me about chart readings. And so I know there are a lot of people who are very interested in this. I have found it to be so useful and helpful and just inspiring, if nothing else. So will you kick us off? And I have a feeling that many of our listeners, and of course, we're spanning the age of Hailey and her friends and her people, and our friends and our age of people. And I have a feeling that even though we're deep in this, there's a lot of people who don't know much about astrology or even having their chart read or what it means. Or can you just kick us off there with your overview so that we can all understand exactly what we're talking about when we say astrology?
Yes, absolutely. And thank you for the warm welcome. Astrology is the map of your soul. Okay. It is predicated on the idea that everything in the universe, this universe, is vibration, and that as we incarnate, we come from spirit into matter. We still retain our the spark of divinity of whence we came, but we have this blueprint of the things that we're going to tackle in this lifetime. So the blessings and the challenges. And the astrological chart, or what we might call the natal chart, is that blueprint. And it is kind of like the curriculum for what we're working on in this lifetime. Astrology is ancient, ancient, ancient. All people who have walked the earth from the beginning of time have looked up at the sky and the heavens to observe its influence, whether it's the simple movement of the tides in relationship to the moon or the larger cycles at play. And so every group of people has had some kind of system where they look to the stars for guidance and help. It's often considered to be kind of new age, which I always find to be hilarious because everything that's really, really old is considered new age. Just it goes through cycles. And, depending on different cultures, some cultures are very accepting of it. Other cultures really get offended or upset at the idea that there's, I don't know, something out of their control or something that some people can understand or others can't. And that's why making that language of the stars accessible is really important. And yeah, astrology is fascinating. It also, there's a great quote: astrology does not require you to believe in it for it to work. So
Beautiful. That's beautiful. Yeah.
important to remember that.
I was going to, the first two words that stood out to me right as you began to explain it is divinity and energy. And we do have this inner knowing that is so amazing and so strong. And to also know that we have kind of a bigger presence or energy guiding us also. So, Jill, kind of, you translate it, I guess, in a way. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's cosmic, but it's also individual, and it is a tool like any other spiritual tool of deeply understanding yourself and the cycles that you're in. And that knowledge, self knowledge, is really the ultimate knowledge, right?
Since I talked to you the first time, I have really dove into my intuition and my spirituality, and I always joke about this with my friends and with my like therapist, psychologist. I was like, well, it was a full moon cycle last week, and she's like, and we know that you feel that really hard. I'm like, yes, I do. Those tools and that belief in that translation that you create has helped me listen to myself, be super confident in who I am, and know that everything is working out and it's all written in the stars.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Yeah, ultimately, that's what it really should be. Goswami Kriyananda, the primary teacher at the Temple of Kriya Yoga, where I did my yoga teacher training and also did some of my astrological training, he used to say, the planets incline, but they don't compel. And it's important to understand that it's, kind of like a wave, right? You have to decide. You're either going to get out of the water and get out of the way of that thing, or you're going to harness that energy and take it somewhere. But to understand the way it works and the way you work, right? Like just, oh, it's the full moon. I mean, ask any school teacher or any emergency room nurse, and they'll believe in the full moon. I mean, it has an influence, and even it's interesting. I lived before we moved to Portugal for 30, almost 32 years, I guess, maybe a little longer, in southwestern Virginia, kind of a rural area. And they still sell old school calendars with the planting and the hunting and everything based upon the cycles of the lunar cycles, right? And so, really, this is an ancient wisdom that can be harnessed. And yeah,
Oh,
I'm glad
it's
it's
just
helping you.
amazing. It's just amazing. And I think it's so interesting. When we first met, let's see, I'm trying to think about when we first had our first session, but I believe that we were still I was living with you, Mom, in Colorado. And I knew that I was moving to Portugal, and the fact that you had a house in Portugal and now you live in Portugal full time, I mean, that just makes me all jittery. So it's really fun, and I want to know like how that's going for you. We were
uh,
talking a little bit about the Portuguese and how they operate. And
yeah,
I would love to hear it from your point of view.
it's been, yeah, I know that the phrase "it's a journey" has been overused, but Lord, woman, it's been a journey. Totally. And this is really fascinating. So as an astrologer, I get to see the charts of the people who come to me. And it's always interesting how a lot of times there's synergy between my astrology and that person's astrology. In the same way that when I taught yoga, I used to say, look, your students will find you no matter where you are, right? It's vibrational. And so I think that's the same with this whole situation. And we did a lot of research looking into what country we were going to move to. We originally started out with like this will be a retirement plan kind of situation, and then just kind of the way things were unfolding in the United States, and just a whole variety of options. I mean, not to mention I'm a Taran, and every time I was at the other house, I'd be like, but what about the orange tree? And then I'd be here and I'd be like, but what about the chickens? So I realized I'm not a jet setting two house person. I'm a one house person who likes to travel. But Yeah, it's been quite a process. None of it has gone exactly the way I thought it would, but I've also, that's part of the beauty of getting older, is now I realize that I set a general plan in place, and then I try to follow the symbols and the breadcrumbs that get dropped for me, so that I move gracefully in the direction of what I want, but don't feel like I have to make it a straight line.
That's such a great point because all three of us have done these major changes over the last year or two. And same thing with us moving to Montana. We had a thought, we had a plan, sort of a plan, and things just started falling into place. And we just went in the direction where things were falling into place. And one of my girlfriends, one of my best friends actually was like, I just can't believe you did this. You're so far away. You're in the middle of nowhere. And I'm like, and it's exactly where we want to be. And I had no idea that this is where we want to be. And I love to travel too, Jill. So I kind of can't wait to come and see you both, and also, you know, be able to travel some more too and see my friends who are in the city, in the big city. So it's good to have like one foot in both, kind of, but also have good roots laid down. I wanted to ask you, since I think you mentioned about the moon and how everyone is affected by the energy of the planets, and I think this is something that you could clarify for us because uh, you know, surfers talk about how the tides change with the moon, and how our bodies are this high percentage of water. So we're also sensitive to that gravitational pull of the moon. Is there, because I think a lot of people have heard that, and whether or not they believe it, you know, I don't know if it's about believing it or not, but, you know, feeling that energy and tapping into that vibration, how significant is the full moon and the new moon and the phases in between?
I think they're very significant. One of the quick ways you can kind of start getting tapped into astrology is being aware of when the moon is new, you know, when it goes dark, and how that's kind of a potent, fertile time. That's a starting energy. You know, people find the full moon very sexy and want to like do like a big ritual outside in the full moon, but that's really more a completion or culmination cycle. And so just observing those two things can be helpful. And then you start layering in the whole idea of, well, what sign is the moon in? How do I feel when the moon is in my sun sign? How do I feel when my moon is in my moon sign? How do I feel when it's in the sign across the sky, the opposite energy of my moon? So that might be more challenging. Um, you know, even you can also just even follow the sun, right? As the sun, you know, the sun is very easy to track, and through the 365 days of the year, you know, is there a certain time of the year or month that you're like, man, I always struggle in, you know, whatever month that is? Well, maybe that's because the sun is across from your sun, or maybe it hits a difficult aspect in your chart. I think for women, women are much more used to tracking because of their periods. You know, they get more into the cycle of understanding, and that's just another way to look at it because the moon does affect that as well. So yeah, I would say just start observing it, and then you can move into, I don't know, getting an app or a fabulous like moon calendar so you can see every day what's going on with the moon. That's just a great start.
Most of us know our sun sign, but when I started looking into astrology a little bit more, and even when I had my first reading with you, I discovered my rising sign is actually what I should be focusing on. Can you explain why? All because I've identified myself as a Leo my entire life, and I'm the oldest of four girls. I'm very much so in charge. I love being in charge of everything and telling everybody what to do. And so I've always identified with that Leo energy. But then all of a sudden I found out I was a Virgo rising. I'm like, hold on a minute. What's this? What's going on here? And then it made so much sense. I was like, okay, these are all the parts I was missing in my Leo sun sign. So can you explain a little bit about that?
Yes, absolutely. Most of us are a fabulous contradiction. And so there might be some very essential elements of our sun sign that we're like, well, yeah, of course, you know. But then it's really important. I would say it's important to also know your moon sign. But the reason to know your rising sign, or it's also called your ascendant, is because it is on the first house cusp of the chart. This is why when an astrologer, or even if you're looking it up online, you need to know the place of birth, the location, but also the time, because the ascendant is the constellation at the cusp of the earth at the time of your birth, and it changes about every 2 hours. And so this gives a different context to your physical form, your body, how you look. It has an influence also on how other people perceive you. It's definitely the energy you're kind of maturing into in life. But the other reason that it's vital that you know your ascendant or rising sign is because the astrological wheel it's a big circle cut into 12 slices of pie, right? And so each of these 12 slices kind of indicate specific areas of life, specific karmas that are unfolding. So the first house is you and your physical body. Second house is money. Third house, mind, etc. So as you go around the wheel, it's important to know which astrological signs are the rulers of each of those areas of life. And so this is what helps us to understand, oh, well, Saturn is in Pisces, for example, right now. Okay, well, if you're a Pisces sun, you probably know that. If you're a Pisces moon, you probably know that. But you need to know your rising sign so you could determine what area of life you are experiencing a Saturn transit somewhere in one of those 12 areas of life. You're needing to work harder, be more diligent, be more mature. This is why it's helpful. And also if you listen to any just general forecast on YouTube, or back in the day in the newspaper, but when they're like, oh, check out the forecast for Virgos, they're going to be talking about Virgo rising, not necessarily Virgo sun. So it's important that you know your rising sun.
Yeah.
Amazing. So, and that explains why you want to know the time of why they always ask the specific time.
Right. And if you don't have the specific time, that's okay. There's actually a whole branch of astrology called chart rectification, where you basically give an astrologer all the important dates of big life occurrences, and they go back and can come out with a general time for you. But if it's the wrong time, you'll probably know it if you're getting a reading, because it just won't resonate. Things won't quite be lining up.
You started off with astrology. Did tarot come after that, or did it come in both kind of ways?
Yeah, they both kind of surfaced. I would say probably astrology first, because when I was involved with the temple and doing my teacher training, I then became much more involved. And one of the practices that, the more we were meditating and involved with all the aspects of yoga, my teacher suggested that I study astrology, that we all study astrology, because it's the law of cycles and the deepest level of understanding of yourself, which is, if you're trying to grow and mature and also be useful to the world, you need to figure yourself out. Everybody wants to save everybody else, but they don't want to save themselves. So
yeah.
I did start looking at it, and I had my first reading, and it was just mind blowing to me, because I had a really rough patch from about 18 to early 20s. I always say, make your mistakes big and make them young, and I did. Luckily, nothing I couldn't claw myself out of, but I had some rough years there. And when that the first astrology reading, and the woman said, "Oh my God, what happened to you?" And I was like, "Yeah, right. Like, you tell me." And then when she was done telling me, I was like, "Can you call my mother?" Because she just thought I went off the rails for a while, and I didn't go off the rails, but I had a lot of things happen, and I had to react quickly to them. And I must say, all those difficulties built in me certain skills that I now use in my work, and I also use to raise 3 children. And so I look at what happened through the lens of growth instead of, oh, I made bad decisions. So that helped a lot. It helped a lot. And then tarot came later. I remember hearing about it. I remember going once to a museum, and they had a big display on divination and all these different methods of divination through different cultures and tea leaves and all these different things. And I thought, wow, that's kind of fun. And I had a friend who was psychic and she used cards, but she used to tell me that she just used the cards not to make people feel uncomfortable because she was basically reading their aura. And I was like, well, I can't do that. That's kind of cool, but I bet I could like figure these cards out. And so I started playing with them, literally trying different decks, took a couple like in-person classes with some friends. But I can't even tell you when I really started to dedicate myself to a daily practice. I guess it was when I found a deck that really worked for me. And I just, sometimes the spiritual path can be lonely. You can feel like you hit moments of stagnation or, I should know the right answer and I don't. You can question yourself. At least I question myself quite often. And so I feel like, the cards for me just started like cutting through the fog of uncertainty and speaking to me in a symbolic language that actually gave me more information than, oh, you're having such and such transit. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I love what you said about the growth aspect, because in so many ways, the people who are in our 20s right now, it's, you can either take two paths. You can go down the one that everyone has shaped for you, or you can go down the one that just completely rebels everyone's like thought of you. And that's kind of what I experienced moving to Portugal. All of these people were like, oh, you'll be back in a year, and why are you doing that? That's crazy. And I'm like, you know what, this is what life is all about, and it's written in the stars for me. Okay. So I feel the need to do that. But it's so interesting that you saying, like, as a tarot reader and an astrologer and someone with such high, spirituality, that you question yourself. And I think that that's a testament to say that not everyone is perfect and not everyone knows the right thing to do. And we just have to remind ourselves of that, and that we're not this perfect human being. We are human. That's the whole point of being a human, is the imperfection.
yeah, well, and some mistakes you need to make.
Yeah,
Some mistakes you
totally.
need to make, and you are better off, I think, making them young. I think that younger people these days, especially with social media and with the advent of parenting that's a lot more intensive, and a lot of people feeling like, oh, I have to steer my child's ship to success versus like, you know, even when I was growing up, I mean, even then, like I had a pretty big break with my family because I wanted to go to college to become a school teacher. And my dad was a principal and he had control of my college fund that my grandparents set up. And he's like, no. And I was like, fine, fuck you, I'm out. uh, I was like, not going to like, be told what to do. Um, but I feel like that's even more so. I feel like we give children a much more like, well, this is the right thing to do next is this, and then you'll go to college, and then you'll get this job, and then you'll get 2.3 kids and a dog, and that's not for everybody. And I feel like the urge to conform in that way is shockingly strong. I mean, you would think that the more women have become empowered, we would feel more empowered, but I think it's been the reverse. So, yeah, do your thing, make your mistakes. And yeah, I think it's important. I mean, sometimes you do have to embrace the fact that you don't fit in the box of even what your chart says. And that's part of astrology is just a validation. I think that's part of half the reason people seek out astrologers, psychic mediums, tarot readers. They have an inkling, they have an idea, they have an urge or a prompting, but they need help making that bold decision. And the chart can really help with that. The cards can really help with that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's how it helped me just get more guidance and a little bit more direction and kind of refine the direction. But Jill, I love what you said, and I think this is so important for all the young people is make big mistakes and make them young. But the even more important part of that is that all of these difficult times are preparing you for something. And they're tools that we'll use for the rest of our life. And things that I learned, in fact, I was just talking to one of my other kids about this because part of me was thinking, why didn't my mom push me to go in this direction or to go in that direction? And I love health and wellness. And I don't think I wanted to be a doctor, but I wanted to be, exercise physiology or a physical therapist. But by the time I made those decisions, it was not something that was going to work out. But it got me into where I am now in holistic health, and I didn't give up on it, and I kept going. But back to saying that I wish my mom had given me a little more direction. As I'm seeing my kids now, I don't even know how much direction I gave you guys. But one of my sons the other day was saying, well, when I have kids, I'm going to, steer them in this direction or steer them in that direction. And I was like, well, you can try, it's like you can try and you can give them some ideas. But really, at the end of the day, I have 3 kids. They're all very different on very different paths. And I love them all so much. And they all have this unique direction that they're going. And I love all 3 of them, their directions deeply. And I still, even with, the unknown, I still truly believe that everything that all the experiences you're going through are there to teach you. And Jill, you've helped me understand that on a whole new level for sure. But also, a lot of times, like Hailey said, you just have to go for it and not worry about what anybody thinks. And everybody has a lot of opinions, especially with social media. Everybody has created this judgment zone, and it's tough, but you have to really just, I'm not going to allow that to cloud my dreams and, keep me from going for what I want to go for.
I feel like culturally we're splitting into 2 factions, people who do and people who watch other people do. You have to
Interesting.
decide which one you're going to be.
Mic drop.
You can't just be a casual observer to life. And I think it's important to, at the end of the day, have a minimal amount of regret. And my teacher always said, and I believe him, that people have more regrets about what they leave undone than versus what they do, And so it is better to try. It's better to put yourself out there. It's better to take that one little step in the direction of what you think you want, and then give yourself the latitude to say, oh my goodness, what am I doing? This is not right. I just wrote a Substack on this because I remember once getting in the car, my dad, he was kind of grumpy. We were all like, oh, better keep quiet. And he turned the wrong way in his car. And we're all like, sitting there with our eyes wide. And all of a sudden my mother's like, do you know where you're going? And he goes, yes, I'm going the wrong damn way. That's where I'm going. And I feel like that's happened to me so many times. It's like, oh, I said I'd stay married. So here we are, and then, years later, I'm like, oh my God, what was I waiting for? You have to acknowledge if you get yourself headed in the wrong direction, that it's easier to do the U-turn then, or, you have to do something about it. There's a great quote from Eckhart Tolle. He says, in every situation, you only have 3 options. You can accept where you are, change it, or remove yourself. End of story. Don't complain. Don't whine. Pick one of those and then start moving in that direction. Then you can feel empowered, and that's what brings contentment. Contentment is not, gee whiz, everything's marvelous. I have everything I ever wanted. I'm in. That's not contentment. Contentment is, I did my best today and I'll do my best tomorrow, and I'm moving in the right direction.
Yeah. Another person that we love, Brooke Castillo, she always says, like, if you're running in one direction and you find out that it's the wrong way, at least you're running and you're figuring out where you're going, not just staying stagnant, not running in place. I think that's what trips us up the most, is we think that it's safer to stay in a place that we're comfortable, when rather you're going to do so much better when you're uncomfortable, going into a place of the unknown rather than staying stagnant.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, life comes with a certain amount of risks. And I think that being risk averse is something that a lot of us as parents, as soon as the media got so, I mean, you could see every bad thing that could happen. I think some of us overprotected our kids sometimes. I feel like that still happens because now many more of the things that could go wrong. But we need to, self-esteem is not something you can buy for your kid. Self-esteem is not something you can give them. It's something that comes from their meeting their own challenges, them finding their own relationship with risk and responsibility. And those things really help to grow a person in resilience, no different than lifting weights grows muscles. Those experiences grow skills. And that's where, again, back to the astrology, I remember having a 30-minute reading done on each of my kids once I got into this, because I was like, dang, there's something to this. And I had a 30-minute reading on each kid, and it helped me so much because like you said, Stephanie, they're all completely different human beings. I remember my first child, idealistic mother. I would like put the cookie next to the sandwich, next to the fruit, next to the chips. She'd take one bite of each. I was the perfect mother. The next kid would take the cookie, shove the whole thing in her mouth, sweep the rest onto the floor, and start screaming. And I was like, what have I done? They're just different people. They're just, just need different parenting skills. So, it's like gardening, for the gardeners out there, some of us are orchids and we only like a certain window and bloom once a year. And some of us are like, cactuses and don't want to be hugged. And, we're all different. And that's the thing. If you can figure out the right environment for yourself, how you think, how you love, how you want to be loved, what level of change and comfort and discomfort you're comfortable with is really key. Some people need constant change. They get bored. Other people need a certain amount of steadiness. And then people can feel guilty about their own needs. No, that's just what you need. It's non-negotiable. It's a need, not a want. Know that about yourself and then grow from there.
That's kind of the interesting thing. Because you do have a sense of all these things, obviously. Like I know how I tend to respond to things, or, how I parented and all that kind of stuff. And what did you say about, like having to be moving all the time, or moving too much can be super aggravating, which kind of is also very Ayurvedic in the way that you were describing that. But what I love about the chart, having your chart read, is you have all of these knowings and you have some ideas. But once you have your chart read, you're like, oh my gosh, this just kind of reinforces all of my intuition or my guesses about myself and how I operate at the highest level. And also permission to, like for me as my Leo thing, so many times, Jill, you were like, Leos need to lair. Sometimes they are spending time in the den. And I'm like, no, I have to be going all the time and doing all these things and taking all these big challenges and taking charge of everything. No, Steph, sometimes Leos go to the den and they rest. And I'm like, thank you for giving me permission to do that.
Leos need to lounge.
Leos need to lounge.
Life is a blood sport, and they need to have their big expressions of energy, and then go curl up in a warm space. Yeah, totally.
Exactly. Well, it just helped me so much when you did my chart reading, because there were so many things that I knew, but just to have a little bit of confirmation, a little bit of you've also told me it's math. It's like it's science. It's not. It's just math, and it can help you in a very clear way. It doesn't have to be super confusing or.
No, it's a different language. I mean, if you want to get scholarly about it, you can. But it really is just something like any wisdom traditions. Like sometimes you're told something and it hits and you're like, I feel that. I can use that. The rest of it, leave it go. You don't have to become an astrologer to understand yourself, but it is useful to understand the cycles because they repeat. And that is when you start to really be able to track things. Most people know when someone is about to turn 30 that they kind of get their shit together or they make a big change, right? The Saturn return. Same thing happens right around 60. Everybody knows somebody early 40s who, popped off and changed their life or did something radical. That's the Uranus opposition. It's coming. You don't have to, sell everything and get a convertible. You can, I don't know, open a yoga studio. You can do something else. But if you're not on track, then you'll have big life events to kick you onto track. If you can feel and intuit, then you can make the small adaptations so the timing is right and you're there when you need to be there. Just like we started looking at places to live 3 years ago, and bought the house 2 years ago. And so then all of a sudden this shift happened and it worked because of the long wave, because of the following the promptings.
Yeah. Speaking of shifts, can you tell us what's going on right now in the planets? Because I know a big 20-year cycle just ended.
Yes, absolutely. There are multiple things shifting. This year and next year are two super dynamic astrological years. The big news that the 20-year cycle that you speak of is the planet Pluto, the planet of death and regeneration, changing signs. I know that Pluto has been demoted in astronomy, but not so in astrology. And so it entered in 2008, and most people do remember the big financial crash. A lot of people went through a lot of life changes that time period, 2008. Pluto first dipped its big toe into Aquarius in March of 23, and then it just made the full commitment at the end of last year to the sign of Aquarius. And that is part of why all this stuff with technology is going through the roof, why there's a certain whiff of rebellion or revolution in the air, because Aquarius represents the masses. And think of Leo as the king, right? And Leo is across the sky from Aquarius. Aquarius is everybody. And some people are saying, oh, is this the age of Aquarius? Maybe. There's a lot of ways to look at that, but I would say watch the shadow of Aquarius first. And the shadow of Aquarius is conformity. The shadow of Aquarius is sacrificing some for the group instead of honoring the individuality of each person and the autonomy of each person. It has to do also with technology, which can be a tremendous blessing or truly destructive.
Like AI
Oh,
becoming
yeah.
becoming
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah. So some of those things are really going to amplify for other reasons as well. Interestingly enough, we have the three other slow moving planets are all changing signs this year. And so that is why this year is going to feel so dramatic. Neptune is going to move into Aries. So Neptune was in Pisces since 2012. Saturn will be moving into Aries, and it's been in Pisces for the last 2 years. It also went in March of 23. And then later in the summer, Uranus will slip into the sign of Gemini. And so I'm trying to remember, it's usually Uranus is about a 7-year cycle. So to have that many energies switch, especially the Neptune and Saturn moving from Pisces, spirituality, dreamy, delusion, rabbit hole, too many stimulants, substances, into boom, the very beginning of the zodiac, the warrior, the immature person, the fighter, the scrappy, hard-headed ram. That's going to be a pretty big vibe change. And that's the beginning of this year. And then everything's going to kind of retrograde back, not Pluto, but the other planets will all kind of move back at the end of the year and then commit to these new signs next year. And it will be game on. So it's a lot of big changes coming.
And they're not necessarily bad things coming. It's more just like change is change, and then how we decide to adjust to the changes.
Absolutely, absolutely. All is change, right? All is change. Some people will be incredibly successful with these energies. You will need a lot of bravery. I think there will be some clarity. It'll almost be like people are waking up from a dream, I think.
That's honestly the energy that I've been feeling. It's this year is my year to, send my career off and be super successful, find my person, no more of these men. Not, they're not
No more
even men,
boys,
they're
maybe a
boys.
man, huh? Good,
Exactly.
good.
Exactly. Yeah, there's so much energy behind this year, and there's just the way that the everything has come to creation. It's really exciting, and I love that you just verified it.
Yeah. I want to ask really one quick question just to clear for my own understanding. When you say a planet is changing signs, so a planet has certain characteristics, and then when it's changing signs, it's almost like shifting personalities. Would you?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay.
So think of the planet as the force. It's the energy that's coming at you. And then the zodiacal sign is the filter. So there's the force and the filter. It's not a different than like, let's say you have Barbie, and then you put her in a warrior outfit and you give her a sword and you give her a shield and you dress her in red, Aries Barbie. Okay. She's still Barbie, but she's Aries. Well, then you put her in the Taurus one and she's going to want a pinafore and some roses and a trowel and have something good to eat and, you know, want to fall in love and smell the flowers. And then if Gemini, there's two of her. And so she's back and forth and she wants to talk about it and think about it. And so again, it's all these different filters. And so that's why we look at, so for example, Pluto's the planet of death and regeneration. So it was in Capricorn, the sign of the sea goat, the sign of authority figures, of structures, of foundational energy, of bosses, of people who are in charge. So that's why the government systems got shaken up. This is why structures that were not sustainable fell apart. Pluto comes in and says, I'm here in this area of life and I'm going to change it. And so now it's going to change the way we interact globally and with each other. So yeah,
So interesting.
it is. It's fascinating, really. And that's the outer cycle and the inner cycle. The outer planets really are somewhat new to astrology. Really, they were just discovered in the last few hundred years. Many astrological systems only go up to Saturn, right? And so these planets that are not necessarily visible to the naked eye also operate with this kind of a little, hidden aspect to it. It's kind of like you can see those energies more in the collective because those energies move so slowly. It's kind of like they pulse through society. So sometimes observing the transits of the faster moving planets helps you to understand yourself better, but those outer planets help you to understand the larger picture.
When you said Barbie is in Taurus and she wants to fall in love and she wants to eat something, hello, that is me.
I was going to say Hailey is Taurus ascendant, and of course I never knew that. Like I never. As soon as I found out she was Taurus ascendant, I looked up everybody. I looked up my husband, my boys, everyone to see what we were because it makes so much more sense. I'm like, oh my gosh, all this time. But yeah, Hailey, same thing. When Jill was saying that, I was like, hello, that's Hailey right there.
It's a missing piece of the puzzle in a lot of ways. And interestingly enough, you can look at someone's chart, and if they have, let's say, they have a powerful group of planets in a sign that is not the same as their sun, and their sun sign isn't very strong, maybe it doesn't like the sign that it's in. For example, Libra, the sun in Libra is considered to be fall. Why? Well, because the sun is supposed to be the essence of you, and the Libran is always looking for their partner. So sometimes they sacrifice themselves, right? But so if you have a very powerful group of planets that might not be your sun sign, it can be your mystical sun sign, and so you might not be a typical whatever Sagittarius. It's okay. You don't have to be. Figure out what unique combination you are and lean into your strengths, but also take your strengths to help you with your challenges because we all have both.
Yeah.
Thank goodness. Yeah.
Right. And that's where skill building comes in. That's where, that's why we come here. We come here to learn. We come here to love. And we don't take anything with us that you can see with the naked eye. Okay. Everything we take with us are the skills that we've built as far as from lifetime to lifetime, and the love that we created. That's all we take with us.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Feels like
Too.
you've known me forever, Jill.
Well, I feel so comfortable with you guys. I always have. Yeah. I mean, it's, I'd have to look and see where my sun is. But if you're a Taurus ascendant, more than likely my sun is right there, either in your first house or your 12th house. So that kind of makes sense that we vibe, right?
Yeah, that we've all
Yeah.
connected. I love it. It's kind of the cards help you with your inner knowing, or it's kind of like your angels gather around and are giving you a language that you can understand, or a direction, or don't go this way. I mean, it has been so powerful for me. And really quick, if I can just share this story, Jason, my husband, Jason and I were considering buying a business. And I talked to Jill about it, and I said, can we run some cards on this and just get some ideas about this? And it feels wonky, but can't quite put my finger on it. And long story short, we moved forward because I thought I just have to find out if this is the right thing or not, even though there's like a little bit of yes and no. There was some push and pull. And in the end, it did not work out. And I was like, that's exactly what Jill said. And I was it was such a great experiment for me, because I needed to know that it wasn't the right thing, but I wasn't going to know it wasn't the right thing until I went through some of the steps. And at the same time, I was also open to all the possibilities of it being right or wrong, not right or wrong, but whatever the potential of it was. But then when I dug a little deeper, I was like, oh my gosh, this is exactly what Jill and I talked about, that it could have been the right thing, but it wasn't. There were too many things that were wrong, not falling into place. Which brings me to another point that I wanted to bring this full circle is, Jill, how long do we have to learn these hard lessons? Like, we talked about like all the lessons that come to us, all the events and experiences and people and relationships and businesses come in our direction. When am I gonna be done with some of the hard lessons?
I wouldn't be in a big rush to finish, because when you're finished, I think you leave.
Okay. Good
I'm
point.
not,
Good point.
so what you want to, I would suggest striving instead for more harmonious understanding. Okay. It doesn't have to be, oh my gosh, when's it going to get easier? It's like, who's to say it's not easy? You could look at, I mean, as my grandmother used to say, if everybody put their troubles on a tree, you'd take yours back. There's always somebody who has it a little more difficult than we do, right? And so it's important to understand and look at those difficulties in perspective. When is it going to be easier? It's easier when we detach enough to see the cosmic wheel turning, and the oh, okay. And so then we try something different instead of banging on that closed door and wondering why things don't work out for us. Oh, that didn't work out. That must mean something else will. That door closed. Okay, well, that's okay. I really do find some very essential pieces of wisdom to be helpful. One, that you're never given more than you can handle. And I think that's true. Two,
Absolutely. Yeah.
two, make sure you're dealing with things that are your actual responsibility. Okay. The Clarissa Pinkola Estes, reach out and mend the part of the world you can reach, right? Don't sit on the couch and despair about what you can't do across the world. What can you do right around you? And also this understanding that that if it's not yours, it's not yours. And if it's yours, you'll get it. It can't be taken from you. And I do believe that. I believe that in relationships. I believe that in jobs, houses, whatever it is. Look back at your life and look at some of the things that you really, really wanted and you got. And then it was like, that wasn't it. It wasn't what I wanted. What did I think I was going to get from that? And then other times where you kind of just wandered into something and something magical happened. You weren't expecting it. You would never dreamed that big. I think about the yoga studio for me. I couldn't speak in front of people without my voice shaking. I took yoga teacher training because I was going to teach children. I was never going to teach adults. And then an opportunity happened for me to teach at a drug and alcohol rehab center for women. And I was too afraid to teach adults, but I wasn't too afraid to help these ladies. And so it was just me wanting to be helpful that formed me into somebody who eventually opened a yoga studio and has trained hundreds of teachers. And that's, who are helping hundreds of people, right? I didn't dream that big, would never have. But I followed the breadcrumbs, the promptings, the ideas. It gets easier when you trust those things.
That's beautiful. Jill, thank you for sharing that. That's just the most beautiful example. So, well, I had meant to ask, in addition to that, do you use the cards as a daily practice to guide you? And
I do.
yeah,
I do my cards every day. I do a daily spread that I got from my book, Easy Tarot. Like, I'm not, you don't have to get a degree in tarot to read for yourself. You do need to find a deck of cards that kind of resonate with you. And then, I used the book, looking up every card until I kind of really started a relationship with the cards. And being, again, a good Taurus, but also a Taurus Mercury, simple, simple, simple is my vibe. So every morning I write a little bit in my journal. Sometimes it's one sentence, sometimes it's half a page. It's usually not more than that because I got shit to do. I always joke that being spiritual could be a full-time job. Like, you could write in your dream diary, and then you could meditate and make your perfect Ayurvedic breakfast and do your yoga practice and blah, blah, blah. And how do you hold a job and do this? I mean, you can fit these things in. Don't try to make it more difficult than you need to. But after I do that, I write down work, home, unexpected, my role, like your role, and then the outcome. And I do 4 cards in that order. 1 card to the left, 1 card to the right. The unexpected is above, my role is below, and the center is the outcome. And then I write them down. And I just kind of look at it. A lot of times I'll take a quick picture with my phone so I can kind of see it through the day. Oh, the tower, nice. Good times. What's going to happen? And then, the tower moment comes and you're like, okay, all right. Jill needs to be adaptive. I don't like that. I'm a Taurus. But I'm learning. So I do that every day. And then usually at the new moon and the full moon, I do a 12 house, like 1 card for each of the 12 areas of life. And I just kind of watch the patterns. And then if I have a big decision to make, I do a Celtic cross. And believe me, I've been doing this for years now. So it took me a while. I can knock that out in 5 minutes. But it used to be something much easier. I mean, I have clients who I suggest, hey, just pull 1 card every day. But ask the question, pose a question in your mind, all right? Your angels, your guides, the whole universe vibrationally is walking around trying to support you. And you're walking around most of the time saying, I don't know, maybe. They're like, okay, let us know when you figure it out. And you never figure it out because you don't trust yourself. It's like, self-fulfilling. And so, being given just a little bit of a heads up on the day, then you can be like, oh, maybe you pull a card and you say, what do I need? What's my best attitude to take towards work today? Or what do I need to do today to feel more accomplished? Or just what do I need to know today? Who am I embodying today? What energy do I embody today? What do I need to watch out for today? It's up to you. And you can charge the cards, kind of tell them what you want them to be. I remember when I first got them, people were asking me, well, what do you do about reversals? Like when a card is upside down. I tried that for a while and I was like, that's too many things to learn. That means I have to learn 2 things about every card. I'm not doing that. I just want 1 thing. I'm like, I'm not reading reversals. I just am a careful shuffler and my cards are not upside down. I just need to make it more simple for myself, because I can overthink things with the best of them.
It's a testament to life too. Just make it simple. It doesn't have to be hard. can be easy.
Exactly. I had a client once, an astrology client, and she was in her mid 60s, and she came to me for a second reading, and she said, "You know, I've just decided I'm not doing hard things anymore. If something's hard, I don't think it's for me. I figure I'm being pushed back." And I was just like my jaw was open. I was like, wow. I always took that like as a personal challenge. Like, I'm going to push this rock uphill, backwards, sideways while standing on my head and raising 3 kids. Yes. Why? What is wrong with you? Like, why can't you just see that as like maybe there's a better way, a simpler way? That's
Yeah,
just wisdom, right?
totally. Wisdom pie.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll have a slice of that.
Yeah. It's such an amazing journey.
Do you have your cards with you? Can you pick a couple for us?
Ding!
Oh,
Cards are always
nice.
close by. I know one of my friends
Amazing.
bought me this like super sexy little night purse, like with this totally rad tassel and everything. And I'm like, dear God, I don't go any place to use that. And I was like, ooh, I'll keep my cards in it.
Yes.
Love it.
So, all right, what do you want me to ask, guys? Gotta have a question.
What does 2025 have in store for us?
Okay. All right. So just a general reading for the collective, and we'll just do 3 cards.
Perfect.
Okay.
So one of our questions too, Jill, was about intuition and trusting your intuition. So even like as you're shuffling the cards, you're listening for the right time, aren't you? To keep shuffling until the time is right.
Yeah, I just shuffle and I just lightly just listen, and then every so often toddler Jill will say, "Now? Now?" And I'll hear, "No." Or "Not yet. Not yet. Not yet." And then I'll make sure I'm clear on the question and not like, "Oh, look at the flower. Oh, right, I have the laundry." No, focus. What's the question? And clarifying, right? I'm reading this for the collective. This isn't for me. I need to make sure. Yeah, 2025. And then I hear yes. And then I usually ask yes. And they'll say yes, 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 yes. And then I always divide it into 3 stacks, and I always pick the center stack. So the first card that I'm pulling for 2025 is the King of Wands. So we're going to pull them all 3 and then look at them together. The second one is 2 of Cups, perfect union. And the 4 of Wands is the happy family. I call this one of the happy family. So I would say that it's important this year for people not to get lost in anger. That's the shadow of wand energy. All right. Remember, we've got both Saturn, the planet of structure, was last there about 30 years ago in Aries. And so the shadow of Aries is getting caught up in anger, and the root of anger is fear. These people who are so toxically mad right now, they're just afraid. They're just scared. All right. So don't fall into that. But King energy also makes decisions. Kings call the shots. They gather the information. They aren't afraid to say, yeah, the buck stops with me. I made the decision. This is what we're doing. Any questions? Hopefully not, because I'm the king. So you do have to move in a certain direction. You have to make decisions. There needs to be a certain level of accountability this year. Also, 2 of Cups. Look for the right places, the right people, the right circumstance, the right job, the right place to live. Look for what's a good place. All right. It feels right. It feels safe. It feels comfortable. It feels supportive. Look for people where you have a meeting of the minds. All right. And also, 4 of Wands. If you don't have community, create it. If you don't have the family situation you want, create it. All right. Don't go walking around hoping somebody else has gotten it together and to build the thing that you need. Sometimes you have to build it. All right. I didn't have a yoga studio. There was nowhere I could teach. So I made one, My family stuff growing up was hard. So I made my own family, and my friends became my family. This is a message for this year, I think. of pursuing what you want, of knowing it's the right thing, and then extrapolating on that with your actions. Okay. It's not enough to talk about it. It's not enough to think about it. It's not enough to post about it. Right. The world is splitting into people who watch and people who do. Don't be a person who just watches, because I really think when you take that last breath, you might have some regrets.
Jill, you're amazing. You're amazing. Thank you so much. We needed that.
I think we really got a beautiful essence of what you do, Jill. And thank you for blessing us with your energy and your time, and your intuition and your guidance has been very impactful for Hailey and I both. And we hope that this was a fun way to share it with people, because what an incredible conversation. Really, we got in there so well and so quickly and so deep, and so many points of inspiration, and how to make it easy, how to take the steps and build it and go for it and learn along the way. And yeah, there might be some hard lessons, but that's preparing us for what's next. Gosh, so many beautiful points you made today.
Well, thank you. Well, I love spending time with you two fabulous ladies. I love both of your bright attitude to life, your can-do attitude. I admire the projects you're both working on. And I'm grateful to be any part of it. And I appreciated being a guest here. It's really fun. Let's do it again.
Yay.
Absolutely.
Thanks,
we're gonna absolutely do it again. I was going to mention Jill has a weekly YouTube channel where you do a weekly reading and a card reading. And I love checking those every Sunday.
Nice.
Also, your website is Nuit Astrology.
Yep, Nuit, N-U-I-T, like the Egyptian goddess of the sky. Nuit Astrology. Yep.
I love that. The Egyptian goddess of the sky. Anything else, Hailey, you'd like to wrap us up with?
We will link all of Jill's places to find her down below, and you can check her out. And she is amazing. I highly, highly recommend booking a session with Jill. I mean, your whole life just opens up. It's really amazing. So that was Wisdom Pie. Thanks for coming by. And ooh, that rhymed. I didn't even mean that to happen.
New outro.
New outro. And we will see you next time. Thanks, guys.
Ciao.
Ciao.
Ciao, ciao.
Okay, everyone, welcome back to Wisdom Pie. As you know, this is a mother-daughter podcast, and we have a very special guest today, which Mom will introduce. But the whole point of this podcast is to talk about all the things that mom and daughters, dad and daughters, dad and sons, parents and kids don't talk about. So that's sex, relationships, how to cook for yourself, how to take care of yourself as a young adult, how to take a leap, and how to live your life to the fullest.
And Jill is a mama, a mystic, and astrologer who loves cooking, eating, yoga, traveling, and gardening. Eating. Oh my God, I have to start over. Sorry.
Especially eating. You're right.
I was going to say especially eating.
Keep going.
Thank you, everyone, for being here. I would like to introduce our very special guest, Jill from Nuit Astrology. Jill is a mama. She's right here. Oh my God, here I go again, embellishing. Okay, one more time.
Like embellish, trust yourself.
Yeah, okay. One more time. Thank you, everyone, for being here today on Wisdom Pie. I'm so excited to introduce our very special guest, Jillet. we can put these in the outtakes. Oh my
I like
goodness.
that. I've been called Jillian. I've been called Jilly. Jilly Mack was one of my friends called me Jilly Mack because that's Tom Selleck's wife. But Gillette,
Jill-
that's my French name.
Gilet.
Gillet. I like it better.
Oh my gosh.